Great. Thank you, Shawn. A couple things. I've been the training manager here for a couple of years now, so I am very selfish in hosting this and hoping that you can help me in this process as well, because 2020 has been the year of double pandemics for law enforcement. We had a pandemic of COVID-19, which taught us how to distant learn, and we kind of learned that on a crash course. And then following that, the civil unrest, which brings a whole new topic of training into our department. So with that, I think we need to talk about the technology, and we're using one right now. Typically, my department uses Microsoft Teams, which allows us to stay connected during this time. And with all of these things, we start sharing files. And I'll tell you this, I'm not real familiar with Zoom, but I've talked to Shawn, and anything that I mentioned today, as far as protocols that we've developed or anything else, if you guys want those, we will. I'm happy to send them to him to send them out. So I encourage the questions, and I thank you for using that chat function and starting out the conversations here. First off, I think with all of the things that happened in the beginning of 2020, we're all going to be suffering some sort of budget shortfall. And so the mandates and the essential training that we're normally trying to take care of, and the desirable training that we're trying to get to, may suffer a little bit this year. And so I know our focus has gone directly towards mandates. And so we're trying to make sure that we're meeting all of the mandates for sure, and still trying to supply the essential training so that we do our job the best we can for the communities we serve. And one of those things is now with the civil unrest is procedural justice. We're an agency that does it every 6 months for everybody that's hired, and we haven't done it. Now we're missing 2 sessions because we haven't been able to join. So with that, let me talk a little bit about the mandates, because I see some questions up there already about defensive tactics training with COVID-19. Ours was firearms. We have some firearms courses that are actually running today, and we had to come up with a protocol for COVID-19 that explains what our responsibility is, what our range masters are supposed to be doing to make sure that all of the students are safe. Obviously, we're reducing numbers of the class size, and we're actually increasing the instructor ratios, because we can't put people shoulder to shoulder anymore and have one range master watching 2 people. We're now spreading them out and having to have another range master there. But we have kind of exited the holding pattern. I see that, Chris Monahan. We've kind of exited the holding pattern with some of our mandated courses, and trying to meet the legislative and the post mandates. I had our post rep here earlier today, and I was hoping that she was going to join. I don't know. She had a tight schedule today, but she was going to try and get into to this discussion. But one of the things that she talked about was modifying a course to add a format for a webinar, which can be done on a case-by-case basis, even with PSP courses. And so I don't know if that's going to work with defensive tactics, depending on what your mandates are, but I would think that would be something you want to talk to your post rep about, and how you would go about that. The other thing is with these mandates is that we've actually kind of skipped some of our mandates because the class is shut down. Particularly for us is our supervisory course. We had a schedule for the beginning of this year, and this month we ran into the 1-year mark, and now they're out of compliance with the 1-year supervisory course. And so the best suggestion we had for that was to write a letter of explanation regarding COVID-19, and then immediately try and schedule them for the next course if we can. If you're missing, we can do the same thing and then try to address those mandates as soon as all of the restrictions lift. So with that, I'd like you to chime in. What are you guys doing differently now? What technology are you using? How are you getting by with training that was normally a briefing training where you were logging the training, and then briefings went away for us. I don't know if they went away for you as well, where that was no longer a tool. And so I kind of want to hear what the best practices are among these other training managers for meeting the mandates and getting these essential courses done.
So while we encourage everyone to speak up, and you should be able to unmute yourselves or chat. I know we saw one. I don't know if you saw, Brian. There was somebody from Allen Hancock College saying, "Hey, we directed our local RBC, the academy there. We're interested in listening in on what agencies are doing in terms of this pandemic and civil issues response." And I'm curious for you or anyone else, if with everything going on and what they're talking about of which many agencies have pulling back carotid restraint, a lot of stuff that's related to muscle memory. Do you anticipate a new wave of training going to be needed for that? And obviously, I think that's a role that CPOA hopes to play a component of with what's coming out, everything going on these days. Sometime within the next year, you're going to see the next wave of, similar to how use of force, reforms were made last year, that all these other things, crowd control, rubber bullet use, all those types of things, there's going to be a need for retraining on that.
Absolutely. We were one of the agencies that restricted the use of the carotid, and our policy is now prohibits it, other than, of course, the most dire of circumstances. But we had to do a once over on that, on all of our policies, to see where it was mentioned, right? All of our training, any of your extended course outlines where the carotid was an option, you need to make sure that if your policy says now that you can't use it, that's removed as one of your options. I think one of the things we're seeing with the second pandemic, the civil unrest, is for us is that I know Post is in the process of writing or rewriting procedural justice. And they're looking to move that out in a webinar format, which means that they can reach a lot more people. But with the budget being what it is, I'm told that we're not going to hear what that looks like until after July. So we've got another week or so before Post can move, because they don't have the money, unless it's COVID related at the state level. I'm told that they can't spend anything. So we'll look at what that is. I think procedural justice, I think your use of force, obviously anything that has to do with defensive tactics or firearms or any type of use of force, we're continually, it seems like over the last few years, continually revising that, looking at it and determining what fits under the necessary force bill. Was anything needed to be changed? And then some of our time that we took during COVID allowed us to reevaluate our training plans, and that's the next step in this. Aside from policy, is what essential courses are you doing as a result of all of the legislative impact on our profession. And so one of those things that we looked at was in our training plan was what courses do we want our people to go to, and particularly our instructors. How many of our instructors have been to instructor course and then not been back to some sort of refresher in 5 or 6 or 7 years? And then the follow-up to that was any of our post courses that we put on, how are we intertwining things like de-escalation? How are we intertwining tactical communications in all of our use of force programs? So whether it be firearms, whether it be defensive tactics, how do we remove the silo of training for that one piece of our training, remove that silo, and then start integrating some of the generalities of de-escalation and defensive, tactical communications. And so we took some time, actually our training bureau took some time to rewrite our training plans, to look at some of our courses and even recertify some of our courses with that language in it, so that we're addressing those issues that seem to be prevalent in our media today.
Yeah, you know, we had our executive director, myself, and our training manager had a conversation with Post last Friday talking about what could come from all of this, and is there a possibility to look into some hybrid options to because right now as they're certifying kind of live training to have some pre-recorded stuff mixed with having an instructor, you know, there and possibly be able to answer questions and things like that. So I'm curious, and again, I want to throw it out to everyone, and go ahead and unmute yourself and speak up. Has anyone had any luck with doing any kind of in-house training thus far? Maybe you had a larger room that you cut the capacity in half, or maybe you're having some luck with some virtual things, or you're using, you know, some models in the Post learning portal or something like that. Have any agencies out there had any success in getting back into any kind of, you know, training, or is curious to see what folks think across the board, because I know we have all types of different ranks and agencies on here, so I'm interested to see, and I know the other panelists would be of what everyone else is dealing with. So anyone have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'll talk about Hancock College, because when the pandemic hit, we had a basic academy class running. It was about halfway through, so we were deemed essential, so we kept on. But how was it that we were going to do like the self-defense courses and the Archon? So we social distanced as much as we could. We never went to wearing masks, but we did do temperature checks and screening with all students that came in. And then when it came to doing Archon, we had to get our Archon in, and we did it with as much due caution as we could. So we're preparing for another academy class August 3rd, and we're going to do the same thing. So while we did do as much as we could, still we've got to get these recruits through our basic academy. So we did cancel all the some of the courses that were not essential. We had an arrest and control instructor course that would be 2 weeks of just basically hands-on, and we pushed that out as far as we could. So like the field training officer courses we offer, they got to go on. So we're having those in our PC 832 courses. So our kind of bread and butter courses, we're just carrying on, doing as much due caution as we can.
Do you notice, David, a difference in the proficiency of cadets going through the academy as they're doing more, or they're preparing that down the line these days it's going to be more online stuff? I know a lot of younger, newer cops tend to fall into, you know, being familiar with technology, but do you notice a change in any of the proficiency of any of the cadets going through the academy these days, given the circumstances?
Not this is our first go through the pandemic, and we may be making those changes for the next academy. Again, we're not going to put any of our academy courses, or actually any of our law enforcement classes, distance learning. I know Post came out and said we can do some of those, like field training officer, as distance courses. We're going to elect not to do that because you just can't get the same training as you do at a distance, like a format like we are here, as you do face to face. We're gonna continue to do those, and we serve Santa Barbara and Los Obispo counties, and some from Ventura County. So our partners agencies are on board with us going still face to face for as long as we're allowed to do it, which I don't think that's going to stop. And that because we're essential, we're going to continue face to face teaching.
Great. Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts? I don't know, because I know you put some stuff in the chat. Emily with OCDA, I don't know if you have anything to lend on what Orange County agencies are dealing with in terms of defensive tactics, or anything going on in that county, given the population there.
I can only speak for our agency, which our role is obviously different from other police agencies, but we have been able to proceed with all of our training. We're doing a lot through Orange County Sheriff's Department. The only things that we haven't done or might not be able to do are defensive tactics and driving simulator. But other than that, everything else we've been able to do. We've rescheduled first aid CPR. So we're in the middle of getting everyone sent through that, but I'm not sure about the rest of Orange County and where they stand. I know they've been pretty busy with everything that's been going on, so I'm not sure about their training right now.
Okay. Anyone else with any thoughts? Anyone from LA County? So I know that, so Shirley, who I mentioned in the intro with EDD, mentioned she's able right now, or has to put a lot of her thoughts into the chat. So what I'm seeing is their defensive tactics, first aid, racial profiling, in-house training's all been suspended, especially from a state agency perspective. The majority of their investigators have completed the arrest and control training to meet perishable skills, and remaining requirements could be done online. So I know right now there's a focus on perishable skills and the post-mandated stuff that we've heard as we talk to agencies. Hey, that's the only thing that we're looking at right now. So we're looking at, you know, how we can change some of our things to possibly being virtual. So I'll turn it back to maybe to you, Brian. Do you see, how effective do you see virtual trainings being coming up with everything going on the rest of the summer, especially the budget cutbacks that agencies have had to make? It may be hard for people to say, even if it's a kick-ass topic, to pay out of their pocket for it and things like that. What do you see as the future of virtual training, or at least the short-term future in the next few months and leading into the fall?
We've used quite a bit of it. I use a program called Target Solutions that I start training and talk those. I started using an electronic format of Target Solutions that I can monitor who logs in, who sees it, and they have to attest that they've read it. I think that's going to be our go-to. In fact, I've used that more in the last few months than I've done in the first year and a half back here. The post-learning portal, we've assigned that quite a bit for some of our CPT courses, just to get some points towards the end of our 2-year cycle. But I really see that kind of being a case-by-case basis, because we actually have a course that we certified for field training officers for the CIT portion of their mandate within that first year. And we have put that on hold to create an additional format of a webinar. And we believed, and when I looked at the extended course outline, I believed that I could do it without any impact. And my instructors they shook their head no at me, every single one of them. So I think it's going to get you're going to get some pushback on certain courses, because we need that face-to-face. You know, our job is face-to-face. We're not used to doing things via video. But I think that's going to be a necessity. You know, we're going to have to find ways, if this continues the way it is, and I keep hearing the new normal. I hope it really is not the new normal. But we're going to have to find ways of delivering training that's meaningful, that doesn't just check the box of being completed, and that people can take with them and learn from. And I believe there's ways we can do it. I've attended some of these other courses online through the webinars, and I never did this before, and I've had some pretty good takeaways. So I think it just, you know, we're resistant to change to begin with. So we'll find ways to make it work. But we are using it. We are using technology to deliver the training that we need to deliver.
If there are no final thoughts and comments, I'm going to put our board member, Chris Monahan, on the spot and ask Chris, and coming from Piedmont PD in the Bay Area and kind of greater Oakland, we've kind of heard from Brian from kind of the Sacramento area and down south. What is the scuttle around the Bay Area agencies right now? I know you mentioned you're in a holding pattern. Does it seem like everyone around you is kind of too, or what are, you know, especially given a large population, what seems to be, if anything, coming down the pike fairly soon, or is everyone just waiting this out?
First off, I wanted to show you my background just to make you remember the good old days, make you feel at home a little bit.
Yeah.
Bay Area is still pretty much only doing internal type trainings. For example, we did some rifle training, and within our department, you consider the greater social bubble in our department. People are around each other all the time. So to do some kind of training internally is not too bad and fairly feasible. Any kind of multi-agency training or our staff going somewhere else for training, that all seems to be on a hold in the greater Bay Area. We are right next to Oakland, and Oakland runs a CIT Academy every quarter. They are talking about one at the end of July, an in-person one. But what they've done is they've taken the class of 30, dropped it down to 15, so that the same classroom can accommodate people that are mindful of social distancing, whether it's masks and 6 feet and some of the other stuff that's been the mandate from the county health officer here. So that is the first one that I've heard of that actually is a go for in-person and outside what I'll call the agency social bubble. So starting to see a little break in the ice. I know Dave talked a little bit about some of the academies and what training they're doing. I know that Alameda County, which is our host county here, still has some driver's training and stuff going on in person in the car. And again, they're able to maintain the social bubble there because you're talking about 10 students in their own car. The difference becomes, I think the instructors say outside of the car, so you're not worried about any kind of cross-contamination. So a little break in the ice, but not big.
Great, thanks, Chris. And any other final thoughts or questions that anyone else has, anything to lend to the conversation today? Seeing and hearing none,
Oh, hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, this is Karen from Post. I got on this call late because I had an audit. But if there's any questions for Post, I'd be happy to address them. Anything?
So thank you, Karen, for joining. We appreciate it. If nobody has any, I don't know when you hopped on, but we were talking about, a conversation we had with Manny and the powers that be last week about, the possibility of is there a possibility down the line of doing some kind of hybrid options where there's some pre-recorded material, but maybe the instructor is on live with some folks to answer questions, so you can facilitate that learning, that engagement, to make sure that the content is sitting in, but in case they have to do it frequently, they're not speaking for 4 hours or something like that. I don't know if that's been discussed but I guess what we'd be curious is what any updates you have for what the immediate future of training looks like for Post that would be good for everyone on the line to know.
Well, I've been seeing some courses coming in modification, and what they've done, instead of completely doing a classroom or completely doing online, there's a combination. So they'll have part of the course will be via webinar, and then another part of the course, say they have to do some practical applications, that's the only part that will be in person. So there's kind of a hybrid. Also I think it's the TLO basic course that they've submitted a webinar format, and part of that they're going to be showing a video, which is kind of similar to what you just brought up, right? There's a live instructor, but they're showing something that's taped, that's not live, which is really appropriate. I mean, we do that in an actual classroom now. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't have a problem certifying a modification with that included in the outline.
Gotcha. Anyone else have any questions for Karen and or Post? Well, we appreciate you jumping on and being able to lend to that. I think that's helpful for folks to know. And I think the discussions today are basically the consensus is there's a lot unknown for everyone right now, for not just for Post, but for agencies as well, for CPOA for that matter, as we try to cater to what you all need. So if there are ideas that come up, please feel free to share with us at CPOA, and we're happy to get those out to everyone. We'll take a breather next week for this lead session because it's butting up against the 4th of July holiday, but we'll return the week after on the 16th with a discussion about use of force reform and what the new training and muscle memory needs will be around that based off everything that's going on. So tune back in then. And we thank everyone for participating today. Thank you to Brian for helping kick off and guide the conversation. And hope everyone has a great rest of the week. Thank you all.